So today for our Financial Friday series, which we're picking back up again, yay, and a little bit shorter now, so quicker opportunities to get some info out to folks. We're going to be talking about gig workers, obviously. The subtitle here is your side hustle worth it? Before we get into the presentation, I just want to thank Onondaga County Cash Coalition and all of these.
Central New York. It's a Central New York Cash Coalition.
Central New York.
My bad. Yeah.
Oh, that's all right. Central New York Cash Coalition. Right, because we're expanding beyond Onondaga County, I guess, right?
Yeah.
That's great. And all of these partners that you see below, and in particular today, we want to shout out to Peace Inc. Because first of all, because Peace is awesome and provides so many different services to the community, and second of all, because Peace helped us put together this presentation with information from their program, which is the volunteer. They are one site of the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program here in Central New York, which provides free tax prep to folks during the tax season, and actually Peace beyond the tax season. And so, their work is the information. Part of the information from this presentation comes from data that they gathered from their real people coming in with real issues around the gig work economy and around especially taxes and paying taxes for gig work and dealing with, not having taxes withheld. So we really appreciate that help. Special shout out to Sharon Thompson, who gave us the story, which we're going to share, and also just general information that they saw as being useful and they wanted to get out to the world for folks that are doing this work to help them prepare for when they do come into their VITA program to get their taxes done, to be ready with all the things that they need, so that they can maximize the amount of money they keep in their pocket and not give to the federal government and the state government. We love the federal government, the state government too. We're not that, no shade.
We want to pay our taxes. We just don't want to pay too much.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you, especially to Peace today. All right, we're gonna jump right in. Oh, and I guess for those that don't know, right, CNY Cash Coalition is the Creating Asset Savings and Hope. So this is a project of United Way and many other partners, and it's a program that brings local organizations together to focus on these issues for low-income people, encouraging the building of assets, savings, financial education, financial counseling, access to tax prep, all these good things around money. And who am I? I forgot to say who I am. So my name is Tom Delwo.
I was going to remind you.
Thank you. My name is Tom Delwo. I am a financial empowerment center counselor at Cooperative Federal. We're one of the partners as well. Cooperative Federal is a local credit union that focuses on service to underserved populations, especially to low-income folks. That's our mission. That's our focus. We're based. Our offices are all in Syracuse, and we're a partner in this because we know the community that we serve needs these resources, and so we want to be a part of bringing them to people. So that's why we are here. Andrea, do you want to introduce yourself too? Anita, do you want
to? Sure. Real quick, because we want to.
Yeah, we want to keep going.
Yeah. I'm Andrea Wong. I'm the executive director of NEDA, the Northeast Holly Development Association. We're a proud partner of the Cash Coalition. We have a tax site, and we love doing Financial Fridays every month, and look for new ways to get financial information out to the community.
Thanks. All right, content. So full disclosure, I know my subtitle said, "Is your side hustle worth it?" And I'm going to tell you that I can't tell you whether your side hustle is worth it or not. But what I can say, after this presentation, you should have some better tools to find out whether it is for yourself, right? So you can evaluate yourself. Is this worth it? And I strongly encourage you to use these tools to make that evaluation and decide, is this really worth it to me? I want folks who are doing side hustle to know that they're profitable, that they're making a decent living wage, that they're doing better than they could with any W-2 job, right? With any wage earning job, at least as good, if not better, right? I'd really like that. And right now, I just want to disclose that right now I am not employed in any gig work. I don't have any particular, I don't receive any money from any of the gig work companies. I have in the past done side gigs for 1099 income, and in some cases, and in my own evaluation, I found in some cases I was profitable and I was doing well. In other cases, I was not, and I had to stopped doing that work because of it. So I encourage you guys to do that same evaluation. If after this you have questions, we're only going to be here for 30 minutes, so we're down to 20 right now. If there are questions, feel free. Andrea, you're keeping an eye on the chat, so
Yep.
we'll highlight stuff, and we'll try to get to as many as we can.
Yep.
Okay. So first things first, gig work does not equal wage work. Very different things, right? If you're an employee, your job is withholding taxes for you. Your job is probably providing you with health insurance. They're probably providing you with, maybe providing you with a 401k for retirement savings. Maybe they're helping you match that 401k. So anything you contribute, they're contributing some too. They're paying half of your Social Security tax, half of your Medicare tax. So there are lots of things that your employer is doing on the other side. If you're an employee, that those things are not happening for you if you're a gig worker, if you're a 1099 employee. Actually, you're not even an employee if you receive a 1099, right? You're a contractor. So what I want to point out here is you must be the employer and the employee. And I want you to sort of think of yourself that way. If you're doing gig work, you need to think both, you need to have both hats. You need to have the employer hat and the employee hat, right? And so I wanted to kind of highlight some of the differences between what employers think about versus what employees think about, because I think it's helpful in framing an understanding of what do you need to be thinking about if you're going to do both things. So employers care about building the business for the long term. Employees care about that to a certain extent, but ultimately employees care about the amount of money they earn hourly, right? And that money is coming to how much money they're going to get, right? So it's not necessarily, I mean, obviously they want the business to succeed, but only insofar as it keeps sending them a paycheck, right? They need to track, employers need to track income minus expenses to know if they're profitable, right? So they need to, they being the employers have to make sure that they understand, are we running a profitable business here? Are we making more than we're spending? Employees are less concerned about the expenses that the business incurs. I mean, it doesn't, I think about like, anybody who watches The Office, you'll this might resonate with you. This concept of, Michael Scott's always throwing parties at the office, and Jan comes in one time and says like, you have to stop throwing all these parties. You're spending all this money. And like Michael being technically an employee, right? Not the employer, not in charge of the expenses, doesn't really care. He's like, yeah, spend more of the company's money. Let's have these great parties. Like, let's do this, And Jan's like, no, this is cutting into profits, right? So that kind of dichotomy, right? That's an example of the employer-employee disconnect, right? So employers track expenses so that they can deduct them from their revenue. So the money they bring in, they want to know how much of it is expense, because we want to know, because you only pay tax on what your profit is, right? And so your profit is your revenue minus your expenses. So any of those expenses that you spend reduce the amount of money you're going to be taxed on, the total taxable amount. And then employees use a standard deduction, not based on their mileage, right? You get a standard deduction with the IRS just for being a human being. Right? You don't have to tell them how many miles you drove or what you spent money on. They just say like, look, this is your standard deduction. This is what you get to remove from your taxes. That's not the case for employers. And then the other thing is employers pay 1/2 of payroll taxes, which is Social Security tax, Medicare tax, and you pay the other half as the employee if you're an employee. But if you're both, you pay both. So that is a really important part, because at the end of the year, when you file your taxes, not only are you going to be paying income tax, both state and federal, but you're also going to be paying both sides of the payroll taxes, which is, close to 15%.
That really hit when I was a consultant. That really hit me. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, you got to be both in this scenario, and you got to think like both. And we're going to talk about how to do that. All right, so this is an example that came from Peace. I just made up a name here. She didn't give me a name. This is totally anonymous, but I'm just calling her Sheila. Sheila worked a 1099 self-employment job or gig all year in 2021. She said she told Peace, and Sharon passed on, she worked very hard. She felt like she worked really hard all year on this job. She went to the volunteer income tax assistance site at Peace to have her taxes prepared and filed for free. which is great. She didn't have to, pay H&R Block or another company or a private tax preparer to prepare her taxes. And at the end of the day, after she sat down with the folks at Peace, got her taxes done, filed them, etc., she said her bottom line was my total revenue minus my total expenses minus the wear and tear in my vehicle, which wear and tear, a fancy term for wear and tear is depreciation, right? So we would depreciate an asset because it has wear and tear, right? It becomes less valuable over years, especially vehicles. So minus my depreciation, my wear and tear, minus my income taxes, minus my self-employment taxes, averaged out to about $11.77 per hour, which is less than, I think that's less than current minimum wage. I think it's just about current minimum wage. It's not much, it's not much more than that in New York State. In federal minimum wage, by the way, is still $7.50. So if you're not in New York State, good luck, right? But bottom line, right? Like she didn't feel like she was making much more than minimum wage. And that number, that 1177 number, is an average that I found cited by I can provide the citation if you want to, but basically that was an average of employees, self-employed gig workers. I think it was particularly for Uber drivers, but and we're going to talk about the difference between gig work that requires you to use your vehicle on a regular basis and gig work that does not require you to use your gig work. And spoiler alert, if the gig work you're doing doesn't require you to use your vehicle, it's often better, because the problem is that it's really hard to tell what the cost of the wear and tear on the vehicle is. And gas is an expense we can all track, but with vehicle gig work, you're using your personal vehicle. So even if you're tracking very carefully, as carefully as you can on gas, it's hard to tell how much of that was from personal and how much of that was from your business. And so we're going to encourage you to figure out ways to separate your business from your personal as much as possible. We'll talk about that in a minute, but it's still tricky. Let me go into the next example, because I think this gives us a good idea. So I'm going to encourage you, if you're going to do this, right, think like an employer first, right? So really try to be in the mindset of an employer. So kind of separate yourself from your sort of standard employee mindset and come into the employer world, right? The business owner world, because you are a business owner when you start doing this. You need to think about yourself as a business owner. So first, I want you to try to create a separate structure to build your business within. And so as an example, right, if you can, and TurboTax and the other tax providers that offer tax prep to gig workers, they have some good tutorials. So if you go to TurboTax, if you search TurboTax gig work, they have a kind of a quick overview of like what you need to know to prep for your taxes. I'm not trying to sell you on TurboTax, because I think you get your taxes done for free through Vita at Peace and other Vita sites, but they do have some good tutorials, or at least info sheets on this stuff. But they advocate, consider getting a cell phone exclusively for your gig work, right? Separate from your gig. That can be tricky, right? And maybe you don't want to have two cell phones, you don't have two cell phone payments, but at the end of the day, you end up being able to deduct the full cost of that phone. All the expenses related to that phone are deductible because you've used it exclusively for the business, versus trying to figure out how much of your personal phone and et cetera you use for the business and kind of figuring that out. So if you can just get a phone for this and just operate through that one phone, that makes a lot of sense. And I would advocate you do the same thing. If you're going to do gig work with a car, I would advocate you do the same thing. Get a car just for this. Problem is, how are you going to do that? Right? That's crazy. I don't can afford two cars just for my gig work, right? I mean, maybe you could work it out that way. But the nice thing about that, right, is that then if you were able to do that, right? If you were able to have a second car, which I know nobody's going to be able to do, but then every drop of gas you put in there is an expense to the business. Every maintenance appointment you have and cost you have is an expense totally to the business. The entire ownership, the depreciation, right? The wear and tear you get to factor in as a cost when you do your taxes. It's all for that car. That's harder to do when in most people's scenario, when you are using a car for both things. So try as much as possible to separate the things. The second thing I want to encourage people to do is create a Google account just for the business, right? At Gmail, and get an @Gmail account, right? I mean, if you don't have to go fancy and have a name and have your own domain and all that stuff, like just get a Gmail account that's just for that business. Use Google Drive to store docs, right? Just for the business. Use Google Voice number for your business number, right? So you can have it forward to your personal phone if you want to, right? Or if you don't want to have that, that's fine. But that way, the Google Voice, you can kind of control where those calls go. Did you have something to say, Angela? Yeah.
I love Google Voice, and I've used it as an independent contractor and as a business. Yeah, it's great.
And it's free, so, use it, take advantage of it. You can also text via Google Voice, which I think is nice. I use it too when I'm trying to keep my own personal life separate from my business life, or my business life. And then use your Gmail account for your business emails. That way, everything is in one place, right? You can put all your docs in there. When it comes to be tax time, you just log into that business Gmail account, and you've got all your docs that you need to share with your tax preparer at Peace to help you get your taxes prepped. It's all in one spot. So I just really, take that step, and it's free and it's relatively easy. Just take that step. And then I would encourage you, even if it's still truly a personal business account, a personal account, not a business account. Even if you don't want to get a business certificate and operate technically as a sole proprietor, you can operate technically as a sole proprietorship with just your social security number. I'm not advocating that you do that, but you can. So even if you're not going to get a DBA, right, and get a business account, just get a personal checking and savings with a debit card that you only use for business, right? Make sure you shop around for an account that's not going to have a mandatory minimum, charge you a fee every month. Check it out and make sure that, the ways to avoid the fee, if there is one, make sure you meet the minimum transactions, etc. But that way you can do all of your business through that account, right? And if you have a savings account attached to that account, every time you get paid to that checking account that you're using for your gig work, you can put aside the money that you need to put aside to pay tax when time comes. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay. So again, this doesn't need to be a separate business. Ideally, you would form an LLC to operate this business. If you're not there yet, fine, but get a separate personal checking and savings for the business. Doesn't need to be in the business name, just your own personal name, your own social security number, put it in a separate place. Okay. Again, continuing to think like an employer, track your profitability. So I feel like this is really important. You need to keep records of all business related expenses. So one relatively easy way to do that is, again, use that business bank account to pay for all expenses, receive all your income there. So have your apps pay into your business checking account, your personal business checking account. Have your run your expenses through that debit card, that separate debit card. Then all of your transactions, all your income and expenses will be in your online account record and on your monthly statement from your bank. And so your account record will give you at least an idea. Look, if your account is consistently negative, right? Like you're consistently having problems keeping cash in that account, you're probably not profitable, right? You're probably not making more than you're spending. And that's an easy way to see it, because you can just look at the bank account. And if you're having trouble with that bank account, this is a good indicator. Now, if you're doing well in that bank account and your bank account is building a cushion, right? You're able to put money into the savings account, like move money out of the checking into the savings account. You have money in that checking consistently. You have a balance in that checking and things look good. That's great. It doesn't mean necessarily that you are 100%. It's not 100% guarantee that you are profitable, however, because expenses that are not cash paid expenses, like wear and tear on your vehicle, right? Those expenses are not showing up in that statement, right? Because you're not paying for wear and tear directly. I would definitely encourage you to, if you do oil changes on your vehicle, at least credit a portion of that to the business expense, so you can basically pay yourself back for part of that vehicle, part of that that maintenance. But at the end of the day, wear and tear is really hard to calculate. It's really hard to figure out how much damage you're doing to your vehicle by using it while conducting business. And by the way, we're not really going to touch on this, but you really need to have a separate insurance policy that is on that vehicle. If you're using your vehicle, a separate insurance policy that is approved for using your vehicle as a gig worker. Because your insurance company, if you were involved in an accident when you are working and they find out that you were working and you don't tell them, you just file a claim and you don't tell them, if they find out you were working, they will not pay that claim, because you need to insurance companies deny claims because you didn't tell them. And in fact, now more often when I'm seeing clients, I do financial counseling for as an FEC counselor, when I'm talking to clients and helping them shop around for car insurance, one of the things they list when you're getting a quote for car insurance is, do you use this vehicle for gig work? And you need to check that box if you do, because you want that policy to be in effect and you want them to know, because you don't want them to deny a claim and just not fix your car, right? Really important. I'm not really going to touch on insurance because I'm not really qualified to advise you about insurance, but that's one piece that I want you to make sure you pay attention to. All right. So I don't know why I said link an app like Hurdler. Use an app like Hurdler to add up by expense type. So Hurdler, I'm not going to link away to the website. They have a premium version, they have a free version, right? I haven't played around with it very much, but from what I looked into, you can use this app to both track your mileage and track expenses. So the bottom line, the bank account is good because it'll tell you, do you have more coming in than going out? But it won't necessarily, although many banks do have this built into their app, and you could use that too. It won't necessarily categorize your expenses and total them for you. So you won't be able to say, you won't be able to go through you won't be able to easily go through that bank statement and say, here's how much I spent on gas last year. Here's how much I spent on, whatever. We'll talk about some other, air fresheners or whatever else you use for your car. So Hurdler can fill in, right? Hurdler can download that transaction data from that account and categorize it and total it in those categories for you, which will be nice because then you can see how much did I spend on this, how much did I spend on that, etc. Andrea.
Tom, some banks have that
Yeah.
financial management component right into their accounts.
Yep.
They're not perfect, but they
no,
can.
and that's great, right? So if your bank has that built into their app, great, use that. You don't have to use a third-party app to do it, but I wanted to cite one in case you don't have a bank account that does that. And also the other thing that Hurdler does is track mileage. And I don't know if I said this. Yeah, I said it later. We'll talk about why you want to track mileage beyond what your app tracks. What I found in doing research for this presentation is that different apps track mileage, track the running miles at different times. And not all of them track mileage that when you're not actively pursuing, actively moving to your next pickup, right? On like an Uber and Lyft. So I want you to, I think it's important that you track your own miles outside of the app. Plus, some people do multiple apps. They drive for Uber Eats, they drive for Uber, they drive for Lyft, they do, all these other things. And so if you, at the end of the year, when you want to give out your mileage, you'd have to download the data from all three of those places and add it up yourself. It would be better if you just track it regularly through a third-party app and have it in one place. This is all the mileage I did for all my jobs. Go ahead, Andrea.
Well, we had one client come in who was with a well-known food delivery service, and that service didn't track mileage at all.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole group of people who aren't getting any mileage information from the vendor that they're working with.
And that's huge because that's going to be your largest deduction from your taxes, right? And we'll talk about the difference between tracking expenses and tracking for deductions in a second. And again, I said it before, I'm going to say it again. I apologize if I'm sounding redundant, but this is not the total picture because it does not factor in taxes and vehicle wear and tear and maintenance. So taxes will come later. You might not know exactly how much you're going to owe in taxes until you file, right? And that, just like Sheila found out, right? Poor Sheila found out when she took out the taxes, like, dang, this really isn't that great for me. So I want to say that again, because I want you to be thinking about that, because wear and tear is a serious thing. All right, these are just some other example expenses that I found. You can obviously gas, cell phone, tolls, office supplies if you need them, bottled water, snacks. I know a lot of Uber drivers, Lyft drivers, they'll throw snacks back there, things like that. That's all deductible. Track that. Any business taxes you pay, for any licensing fees you pay, tolls, yada yada yada. Right. I like the roadside assistance plan, right? That you have that could be deductible. Of course, again, anything that you don't use exclusively for the business, right? So if roadside assistance, you pay a fee for a roadside assistance for the year, you can only deduct a portion of that, because a portion of that is obviously personal, because it's also your personal vehicle. So keep that in mind. Okay. I just want to, so we talked a lot about expenses, and expenses and deductions are very similar, right? Your deductions that you're going to make are based on your expenses, right? But they are not the same. And there's one important instance where I want to make that clear. So again, I'm encouraging you to track your mileage outside of the gig app. I just noticed my words are in there, but most gig workers use the standard mileage deduction on their taxes, not the sum of gas, maintenance, etc. So what that means, break that down. So when you file your taxes, you can deduct, you have your revenue, right? That's how much money I brought in. And you have your expenses. That's how much money I spent to operate this business. You kind of have a choice when it comes to the vehicle. You can say, I want to add up my gas and my maintenance and all that stuff, and then subtract all those costs from my revenue. Or the government says you can just blanket say 56 cents a mile that I drove. Take the number of miles times 56 cents. That's your deduction. Most gig workers use that. And it actually, according to TurboTax, it ends up being better for them to do that. You end up getting a larger deduction if you do the 56 cents a mile. 56 cents a mile is supposed to include things like wear and tear, gas, maintenance, yada, 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 right? So I want to be clear here. You're still going to track gas, okay? And you're still going to track maintenance expenses, because you want to know those are real out-of-pocket cash expenses that you pay. And you want to know what you're paying for those on a monthly basis, so you can see, am I profitable? Am I making money on this deal, right? That's helpful. That 56 cents a mile thing is just a government thing that you use when you file taxes. So you want to track your mileage, and you want to track your gas and your maintenance. At the end of the year, when you file your taxes, you're going to use the mileage as a proxy for those other things. And the 50.
And generally, Tom, the mileage is set for the whole year.
Yeah.
And we're watching gas prices go all over the place right now.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so that's a concern.
Yeah. So do both, right? The other things you'll need when you file your taxes is you want to know the make and model of your car, which you will know, the year it was first put into service. So if this is not your first year, you want to know, because what they will allow depreciation. All IRS depreciation has a certain number of years that you can depreciate an asset. Like for homes, it's like 27 and a half years, right? So cars has another number. You want to know what year you put it into service. If you're going to try to deduct a portion of your home, right? So your business operates out of a portion of your home, you're going to want to know the square footage of the space that you use for your business, and use exclusively for your business. And just like, and I didn't say this in the first slide, but just like you're going to create a Google account, you want to create a space in your home. I just realized, I just looked at the time, it's 12:30. We're almost done. There's only like 2 more slides anyway.
It's just the two of us. Let's go ahead and finish up.
Okay.
in a way that makes sense.
Okay. And then you'll need the 1099s that you receive. And if you don't make more than $650 on any one of the apps you do, they're not going to 1099 you. So you're going to need to know how much you made, which there are forms, there are reports you can download from most of those apps that'll tell you how much you earned. Or you can use your bank account that you've used and you'll see add up all the income you've made, the revenue you've made. Each time you get paid throughout the year, take 25% of each paycheck, throw it into the savings account. Just move it over. If you're on your bank's app, move that over, right? You'll gradually build up a cushion in savings, and that's the money you'll use to pay taxes when it comes time. Try to do it immediately. If you can do it right away, as soon as the money hits your checking, transfer 25% to your savings. You can stay on track that way. You don't have to worry about it at the end of the year. You should have enough money to do payroll taxes and income taxes and all that. It's possible you won't undersave, right? It's no guarantee. 25 to 30% is just a ballpark number, but you'll be better off than you would have been if you hadn't put that money aside. And in some cases, you won't need it all, and you'll have some money, which is nice. And then, of course, connect with VITA. Call 211 to get an appointment during the season, which is, by the way, the season starts at the end of January and goes until April 15th. So, okay, there are pieces of this you do want to think like an employee. You do want to track your time, because at the end of the day, you may want to figure out, hey, what hourly rate am I making on this? And so you won't, if you don't know how many hours you worked, you won't be able to calculate that number. You won't be able to take your profit, divide by your hours, your profits divided by your hours, and you'll get an hourly rate, right? Math was never my strong point. Funny that I chose this career. And at the end of the month, right, take your business bank statement and take that amount, like how much did I bring in? How much did I spend? Take what's left over. Hopefully it's not a negative number, and then divide that by the number of hours you worked and see, are you making more than minimum wage? And again, even if you are making more than minimum wage, remember, this doesn't include wear and tear. So, just keep that in mind. Those are expenses you're not including here in the calc.
Well, and are you making enough to support your family? I mean,
yeah.
Minimum wage might not be enough for
Yeah,
you.
right. Absolutely. Yeah, and you could go out and get a minimum wage job, and you might have a 401k, and you might have other things. And that's the last 2 points on and thinking like an employee. If you're going to do this exclusively, consider opening a retirement account, an IRA individually, and saving in it. And also reach out to healthcare navigators. I can send this presentation out afterward. That's a live link to the website where you can search a healthcare navigator near you to help you shop for New York State of Health insurance. Don't go without health insurance as a gig worker, right? Get a policy through, even if it's a bronze level policy, get some kind of insurance, health insurance through the healthcare navigator of the New York State of Health. These are things that employers provide. I know it's like hourly rate is not everything, right? Employers provide 401ks, they provide health insurance, right? So these are things that are missing when you're a gig worker. You should try to add them when you're thinking with your employee hat. And that's it. If you're having issues with this, you want to talk to a counselor. I'm one of the Financial Empowerment Center counselors. We have many others. We've just hired some new counselors. We've got people on staff that can help think through these issues, help you budget, help you build credit, help you reduce debt, all those good things. And so if you want to reach out to us, syracusefec.org, and click on the Make an Appointment button, and we'll connect with you and we can help talk through your unique situation. And we appreciate you taking the time today for this presentation.
Tom, thank you so much. I mean, this was a lot of information. Yeah. I think the other thing I was thinking, because I was a self-employed for a while.
Yeah.
The time you spend doing the work, and then there's the time you spend working on the business.
Yes.
And so when you're thinking about that hourly rate, I mean, that time you spend managing your money, managing some of the other aspects of the business when you're not actually providing the service, you need to factor that in too.
Yeah, that app Toggle is free, and you can push the start button when you start thinking about your stuff and push the stop button. I know myself though, often I'm thinking about things and I don't, you know what I mean? Like I'm spending time working on something in my head. I don't necessarily push that button. So try to track as best you can, because you should know, is it worth it? So.
Well, it's a tricky discussion, and we know a lot of people came in this tax season frustrated because they thought they were doing better, and then when they had to realize the reality of the tax situation, it was frustrating for people. And so we really want to make sure people understand the situation and get ahead of it, so they're making the best decision for themselves and for their families. And so thank you so much for
problem.
taking the time today. And we'll be doing another one next month. I don't have the list in front of me. We're doing 3 sort of prep. Next one's for W-2 workers, right?
Mhm,
And
yeah.
how to prepare for tax season next year.
Yep.
And then at the final one this summer will be on seniors, right? In
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of getting
Senior,
prepared.
whether you need to file or not,
Yeah.
based on, so folks, Social Security recipients,
Yep.
which tend to be seniors.
Awesome. No, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's great to take a look. I know it's not the middle of tax season. We think it's a good idea to plan ahead. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks for being here with us, and we
Yeah.
will see you later this summer.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.